Hi.
And hello, we've got the controllers, we've got Marita, welcome Dave, everyone else. I'd like to call, first, Jeffrey, are you recording?
Yes, the recording has begun, and so everybody should realize that when they speak, it'll be saved on our official recording of the meeting. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
So I'd officially like to call the July 22nd, 2020 meeting of the ICA for Harrisburg to order. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes for last month, the June meeting. I hope everyone's had a chance to review them. Are there any corrections or additions? And if not, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Ralph. And a second, Doug? Thank you. And any other comments? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Great, motion passes. As we all know, we accepted the resignation of Tina at the beginning of July. It was very hard for all of us, as Tina was with us from the beginning, and many of us had known her from well before then. I'm heartened to know that she'll still continue to help the city of Harrisburg in any way she can. I'm disheartened that the frustration with the city administration caused her to make this difficult decision and resign. That position is now vacant, and it will remain so until Senator Costa makes an appointment, which may be as late as September, I'm guessing, given everything else that is on their agenda. We will also keep the Secretary-Treasurer position vacant until that time, and then we will address filling that vacancy. Normally, if we were in a meeting, you'd see us all around a table. And so you'd easily identify another change to the ICA board. And I'm gonna turn it over to Jeffrey to make that statement and announcement. And then I assume you'll go right into the financial report.
I will. So thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to put a statement into the records and for my ability to report on the recent departure of one of our founding members, Mr. Bruce Weber, from the board of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for Harrisburg. As you know, Act 124 of 2018, which established the authority, provided that the Director of Finance of the assisted city would be a member ex officio of the board of the authority. It is the position, which is the non-voting member of the board, not the individual who holds the seat. Recently, Mr. Bruce Weber resigned from the city of Harrisburg as Director of Finance. Prior to his resignation, he submitted correspondence to the authority naming Mr. Neil Grover, city solicitor, as his designee of his office. Until such time as the City Council approves a new Director of Finance, it is my understanding that Mr. Grover will serve in the function of ex officio, non-voting representative to the board of the authority for the City of Harrisburg. And Mr. Grover has been at most of our meetings, and he is with us today. So thank you, and we are going to make official mention of his appointment as the designee in the minutes of our authority meeting. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to bring that to your attention. With that being said, we are going to transition now to the next item on our agenda, which is the summary of bills paid since our last report last month. This is the report for July 21st, 2020. Most of you have on the board have received a copy of this report. There were only, let's see, 2, 4, 5 payments this month. And the starting balance in the authority's account at the beginning of the month was $82,853.92. And the ending balance at the end of the month was $77,706.16. This is the first month of our next fiscal year, which began on July the 1st. So we are currently operating in our next fiscal year. That is the 2020-2021 fiscal year. We have not yet received any of our allocation from the Department of Community and Economic Development for this new fiscal year, but we understand it is forthcoming, or at least the partial. Remember, 5/12 budget was approved by the Commonwealth, and our 5/12 allocation will be coming shortly from the Department of Community and Economic Development. We have earned $9.78 year to date on our account. And of course, we have an interest-free checking account with First National Bank, which we manage. So thank you, Chairperson Carter, for the opportunity to report on our bills, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions about our finances as we go forward.
The host would like me to unmute, sorry. Thank you, Jeffrey, and welcome, Neil. And as Jeffrey mentioned, it's the first meeting of FY21, and it's coming in like a lion. The storms are amazing. They seem to have subsided for a second. But Charlie and Bill, it's raining, so we should be talking, because it seems every time I talk to the controller's office, it is raining. I'm excited that Charlie and Bill are joining us today. I found the controller's office just an amazing resource since I started. They never wavered in explaining and giving us time throughout the years. And so it's a little embarrassing that it's only now that we've invited them to come and give a presentation. And I think we're going to make it a recurring theme because I know they'll have some great insights. And you're welcome to come back as often as you like. And so I'm going to turn it over to Charlie and Bill. And Jeffrey, I believe, is standing by with some screen sharing so everyone can see the numbers that come up. Take it away, Charlie and Bill.
Thanks, Audrey. We got an invitation to come to this meeting, and you had asked a couple of questions. What do the numbers for 2020 look like as of 6/30/20? Are the revenues and expenditures in line with projections, and do we see an impact of the pandemic given your years of experience? And I appreciate that shot with the financial cycle of the city. But Audrey, we're friends, so you can say years of experience like that with impunity. I had asked Bill if he would try to go through, and we put these schedules together, and projected general fund revenue, the cash basis, revenue over expenses, and try to get some idea of where things are. But it is, I think everything should be taken with a severe caveat that we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this is, years of experience right now aren't worth much. And so we'll give you the best we can to try to give you some sense of where we think things are and where they might be. But it's a lot more guesswork than we typically have put into these kind of things. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who's going to walk you through these schedules.
All right, I'd like to clarify a couple points on the first schedule. Projected general fund revenue, 2020 projections, $65,513,685. There was some question as to how that was derived. That is based on 6 months of actuals, January through June, and 6 months of projected actuals based on 2019 actuals. So that would be July through December of 2019. And we put this together and use this internally in our office to give us some direction as to where the city's going, because there's really one forward-looking projection the city does, the mid-year report, and that comes out August 15th. So we use this.
We try to stay on it in case we see anything alarming. We work closely with the business administrator and the finance office with these things, and kind of throw numbers back and forth as years go by. Year goes by, and right now, like Bill said, we're doing it, but by then they will do it shortly, and their mid-year projections, and we'll see where things are. We typically are pretty close. But who knows what's going to happen this year.
So gentlemen, just so I'm helping you make your points, if you can just confirm that the information on the screen is what you'd like me to display. I'm currently showing the 2020 general fund revenue projection document. Is that the first document you'd like to talk about?
We had just gone through the first document we just talked about was quickly the year-to-date projection general fund revenue.
Yeah, that was what I thought.
Okay, we're moving on to the next one.
Okay.
Jeffrey,
Unless there's any questions on that first one.
the agenda is up on the screen.
You're not seeing a change
No.
when I change.
No.
Okay, hang on one second.
Now I see you.
Yes. Let me try sharing again. And what can you see now?
Just that you've started screen sharing.
It doesn't show anything?
Black screen.
Okay. My apologies.
I will say Charlie and Bill were nice enough to share this with the members in advance. So we do have, most of us have probably hard copies or have it on our computers at this moment. So we're really trying to make sure.
We will be in the next day or so putting this up on our website too. For those of you who didn't get it, you can access it that way if you want to.
And maybe we just abort the screen sharing and
Okay. I apologize. It's working fine on my end, but for some reason not on yours. So
Okay, back to you guys.
back to the guys. Thank you for your patience with our technology. Yes, we do have these documents. So if anybody needs them after the meeting, and the board members have received them all in advance of the meeting.
I don't know how this works exactly. This is only my second Zoom call. But I just said that we will be posting these documents to the controller's website. So if you all want to access them there, you're welcome to do that. Moving on to the next one, which is the historic cash basis and revenue and expenses. Bill, you want to walk them through that?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you a little bit. The 2020 projection for this schedule is based on June 30th numbers doubled. So it's a straight line projection. I put illustrative only there because I didn't really feel that was a forward-looking projection, but it just gives you an idea of where after June 30th we'd be at the end of the year.
But there are obviously some weird things going on in there. As you can see in the personnel expense, we're way down from what our budget is, in a large part because we're not spending any money on healthcare. City is self-insured, so we're pay-go, and we're not paying anything. Nobody's filing any claims, so we're not paying any bills. My instinct is that's going to catch up with us. Some people are still going to get sick and still need to go to the doctor and hospitals and things like that. I don't know what's going on right now and why they're not taking advantage of their health insurance, but they're not. That's a big number. They're way down. Some of the other stuff, you can see the capital expenses are down significantly from where they expected to be. And we, once again, we haven't been able, from our little perch, we don't know what's going on in the city all that much. And so we know the building's been closed and we know people are working from home. I don't know what kind of things they can do in terms of spending money on capital if you're not exactly in the same usual work days that you usually have. So those are conjecture. That's conjecture, but that's another big reduction that may come back. But you can see that this has been over time, there has been a building of the fund balance over the years to the point where we're projecting a fund balance of $34 million at the end of this year, which is, considering what I'm hearing from a lot of other cities, this is a pretty nice place to be.
Audrey, should we jump in if we have questions? Or should we wait till the end?
No, please jump in. It's easier for us.
So one of the concerns that we had heard at a previous meeting that perhaps you can address is that although there seems to be a very significant fund balance at this time, there's also been some discussion about using that fund balance for the first time, that there's some significant potential expenses, including things that we don't believe have happened yet. For example, the resolution of the circumstances with AMBEC, which would require a cash payment and some sort of settlement. Are you familiar with any of the decisions to utilize that fund balance? Because you're right, it is extremely healthy projected for the end of the year. But of course, we've heard those concerns that perhaps the city is going to start dipping into that fund balance, and therefore it's somewhat of an illusion that it looks so healthy.
No, I would say it's been an illusion for a long time. And my position has been on that fund balance forever, that when you owe somebody $25 million, that being AMBEC, then part of that fund balance is a loan that we're paying 6.75% interest on. And I've been so vocal about trying to pay that debt off. I mean, it is costing us $1.2 million a year in interest payments, and we are not paying anything toward the principal. So it continues to build. And so I have been, pretty vocal about trying to get this debt paid off. But I do not know if there has been any decisions or not. It's not in my job description, so we never know exactly what might happen. But I can tell you that not only do we have a fund balance that's pretty healthy, but the cash across citywide is pretty healthy, and we got about $50 million we're projecting at the end of the year in cash. At the end of June, I mean, we got $50 million in cash. That's a lot of money. I mean, I was listening to a report about the city of Portland, Maine right now, and they're just about the exact opposite. They got a $50 million debt service payment. They don't have any money. Now, the other, one of the things is, though, we're looking at revenues that are really unknown right now. We look at the parking. We're looking at, you see the business privilege taxes dropping significantly. We know we're going to take a hit on earned income tax, but it's a lagging variable, so we don't know exactly when we're going to start to see it. But if the statewide unemployment rate applies here, we're probably going to see about a 10% reduction in people. Now, I think the people that are losing their jobs weren't making the greatest amount of money, so it's not going to go dollar for dollar 10% cut the EIT, but we are going to take a hit there somehow. So I'm not unhappy that we have all this cash, and I'm certain the mayor and the business administrator are happy with that as well. It would be my advice to hang in here a while. It's only June. We can see how things play out towards the fall and maybe take a real bite at this AMBEC debt. I would really like to come back if I could one day and just talk about debt in some detail, because it's more than we can do right now. But I have had and continue to have ideas about this that I'd be willing to share with you if you were interested.
Sure, and I don't want to put Neil on the spot because we didn't say we were going to talk about this. So I want you to feel you have to give us an update on where that negotiations is if there's not public information on the.
There's no problem with that. I can tell you where we are exactly.
Great.
So you may recall that at the end of last year, City Council approved a term sheet with the condition that the actual agreement come back to them for approval as well. So the term sheet was agreed upon, an agreement was settled upon, and literally the last city council meeting before the shutdown, that resolution to approve that contract went to city council. I can't guess what 7 different council members will think. I think Charlie's hit both pieces. We're not in a bad cash position from a lot of very conservative approaches over the time, but the concerns and uncertainty about next year, if you think of our tax base as activity based, and they've stopped activity, it's a little scary of where that will be next year. I don't know where council members will be on an AMBAC release of funds, and that discussion hasn't happened in earnest yet. We have asked our financial advisor to go back and speak with AMBAC again. They had reached out to us directly, and obviously AMBAC's concerned not just with us but with everybody. The senators issued their proper notice of force majeure on the stadium bonds. They weren't paying any money towards it, so we still pay the stadium bonds without the rent for the stadium. And you tell me whether there's going to be a baseball season in 2021, yet alone 2020. Those are real concerns that we're now, going to have to talk about. So I think it does throw a cloud over it. I don't think anyone denies that resolving issues with AMBAC is a good long-term solution for taxpayers. It's just what's the responsible thing to do if your tax base is in question at the moment. So I mean that's the internal discussion going on.
And that's a great segue into saying, yes, Charlie, we want you back to talk about debt at some point. But now let me get you back to what you were talking about today so that we can.
We're going to go to the next table, which is taxes, where we're looking at where we think taxes are. It kind of strayed into this table when we were talking the last time. And Bill, you can walk them through what you've done on this table then.
Okay, so there was some question about the real estate tax here. This is the current levy only. On the previous page, when you saw revenue projections, that was the total real estate tax receivable, including prior year levies. So that's why this number doesn't match. There was some talk about, maybe just looking at the current year levy would be a better indicator of what COVID was doing.
What we thought was, we do get prior year taxes when people get called into court and so forth and so on. But it seemed to us the prudent thing to do would just look at what's going on right now this year and what it did to our receivable. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, and so basically they're all taking a bit of a hit, especially Mercantile Business Village, except for earned income, which is still above last year and prior year.
So once again, it's not bad. But it's just.
Charlie, can I ask a question about the earned income tax? This is a question out of curiosity. When all the downtown employees are working from home and they don't necessarily live in the city, what is the status of collections on the EAT for those employees?
That is a terrific question, and we don't have the answer. We've been talking about that for a while. And what about the people that are working? I mean, there was a really kind of fascinating article in the Wall Street Journal about that a month ago. And who has waivers and who has reciprocity? People from Pennsylvania now living in New Jersey. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know where to get it. And maybe, Neil, maybe the tax collection people know. But if
the
it seems to
general
me,
rule, it's associated with the headquarters. That's the general rule.
Okay.
So we take the position at the city that the money's still due and it has been turned over. Whether the state legislature will stay there, I don't know. So, but
well, the tax collecting people are taking the money.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I care about.
Let
them try and claw it back.
Good
Question, though. That was a darn good question. It's one we've been kicking around. That's a good answer, Neil. Thanks. You're right next door. I should talk to you more.
Oh, Charlie's being modest. Charlie knows where every body is buried. Don't let him tell you otherwise.
Okay, so that's where we are on taxes.
Can I ask one more question before we leave the tax page? The extraordinary taxing authority is reflected in these numbers because obviously we're still collecting at the extraordinary rates. And I just wanted to, that's sort of, to me, that's like an asterisk that it's important to point out when we look at the numbers.
Well, I mean, yeah, we look at more like the sword over our heads. That we're trying, well, that, you know, that's one of the things we want to talk about next time.
Okay.
Is sort of how to approach that. And then the other table we have is just parking revenue, and you can see that that's just going off the charts here. It's not, we haven't gotten anything for 3 months, and we don't know when we will. I can tell you this, that Bill and I are downtown every day. No one else is. So there's no one parking down here. It's delightful to get in and out, but it's nobody's parking.
Well, I assume at
I guess
some point, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's sort of the report that we were planning to give that we're giving today. Overarching the whole thing is that while we have a bunch of numbers right now, I wouldn't want to hang my hat on any of them. And so I do think that it's nice that we're in this position that, did we go over this? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, we missed a table. Sorry, Bill.
Charlie, can I ask a question about the parking line, the parking report? Are there any ramifications for us to be worried about down the line with the absence of parkers in the system for the time being?
In the garages?
Ramification,
In the
well,
garages?
in the system as a whole.
Yeah.
Given, and what are those ramifications for this? So obviously, in the short term, we can see the immediate loss of revenue over the last 3 months on the report. But looking ahead, there's a whole scheme, right? For lack of a better word, a whole scheme involving the monetization of the parking system. And are there ramifications to that scheme if the revenues don't recover or recover to an unsatisfactory level?
Well, I guess there is a threshold that they have to reach in terms of revenue before they share anything with us, if that's what you're referring to. Beyond that, I'm not certain what the deal is between the people who bought the parking lots and the people who are managing the lots in terms of what they're on the hook for the bonds that they borrowed from money they borrowed from the state on these. So I guess they could conceivably go into default on those bonds, but I'm not sure I don't think we guaranteed those bonds, did we, Neil?
No, the scheme is very thoroughly developed. And I think the scheme is not in an evil way, but that is the design of the system, which is very complicated. Like anything that's a public bond, the bond gets paid first. Our revenues come after the bond, and there's a list of the buckets that get paid. So the city does have ramifications if it doesn't come back. Some of the good news is the system and the entire financing was based on a long-term lease with DGS that is continuing to make its full payments on that long-term lease on a regular basis, and with some other long-term leaseholders. So the money's coming in to meet the bond payments, but there is both what we get in a bucket. There's also the integrity of the physical plant of the system, and that money has to go into other buckets to pay for that. And that's sort of been a constant discussion on how that's going to play itself out over time. So, I think the original imagination was it'd be worse than it is because those long-term lease payments are coming in. I had seen the Commonwealth authorize the payment to the system in their budget when they passed the budget. So that's some comfort that they have signed off on that payment coming over for the year for their parking system. But that doesn't mean there's enough revenue right now to not be in trouble down the road. We don't guarantee a penny of that money. That's guaranteed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I think the one thing I feel certain of is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is not going to let their bond go into default. So they will act as they have to act.
And on that point, Neil, just to follow up, if I remember from the coordinator's report, there was a note in there about a bond payment due July 1st that was paid partially from reserve funds, and it was an interest-only payment as opposed to any capital.
Right, and I know that there is, some challenge to it. They will
Mhm.
pay that, and that's what the reserve fund is for. And then there's I believe a 12-month replenish of the reserve fund that has to happen on the deal, which is
Okay.
also in such bond deals. If things are really bad, not just here but everywhere, and I saw someone today refer that they expect that there's going to be no relief even through Christmas. I just don't think there are going to be changes in the state law level and what they're going to do just to sustain. I mean, that's just, they're paying unemployment. They're not getting income tax. The state's going to be in its own tough boat, as we all will be if this goes on very, very long. And I think we're sort of in that unknown territory that none of us have been in before.
Right. Thank
I
you.
guess we got one more table, which is all the different fund balances that are we, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. And we did a projection, or actually not even a projection, just an accounting of what we have on hand, cash on hand at the end of June. And once again, it's a nice place to be. Most cities aren't here. There are some benefits to the fact that we weren't allowed to borrow any money, and we've been living frugally for the past several years because we can't get ourselves into too much trouble. And so now we're in pretty good shape, I think. So in terms of where this city is versus other places, I'd say, places that are in bad debt, they've been using their money to do things instead of paying their pension funds and those kind of things. They got trouble, but it's sort of like the same Warren Buffett quote that, you can't tell who's swimming naked till the tide goes out. And people like that were borrowing money to pay their pay their pension funds and stuff like that, is trouble. We're not in that kind of trouble. And I'm glad. And I think it's fun. It's neat that we still have an option to paying some of this debt off at the end of the year. And I also think we need to start, Jeffrey, I'm definitely cognizant of the fact that we only have a couple more years of this special tax. At the position of this office, we need that tax. We'd like to keep that tax, but I also think that, I don't like playing poker with other people's money. So we ought to be looking around to see what options we may have if we can't get there. It's not going to be pretty, though, I can tell you that. So we'll talk about that next time.
Any other questions for Charlie and Bill? Yes, Ralph.
May I ask a question on the last report that you just referenced, which was the fund balance report?
Yeah.
The column that's titled encumbrances, could you please give some explanation as to the numbers that are listed in that column, the use of encumbrances for accounting and how that works?
Well, this is what in the old days when we had differences between public and private accounting, this would be what you would call a modified accrual system. And an encumbrance is money that we have committed to spend, but we haven't yet spent. So anything that we have approved purchase order for, and a contract's been let or a purchase order's gone out, we've reserved the money to pay it, and that's an encumbrance. So that we have purchases worth 3.5 million in the general fund that haven't cleared yet. Sort of like, deducting your checks from your checking account that haven't cleared. We owe this money and we just haven't paid it yet.
You mean it hasn't been invoiced yet?
Yes.
And can you give any comment on the quality of the dollar amounts in the encumbrances column? It relates to the use of the accounting software that the city operates, as far as properly recording all encumbrances as they're made. Can you give some comment on that? I know there's in the past we've heard some discussion about the city's accounting software and the capabilities of the software, possibilities of the city beginning to upgrade its some of its IT infrastructure, including accounting. And is this the right place for me to ask that question? I imagine it's related to the accounting for encumbrances.
Well, yeah, it's a good place. And I think we're pretty happy with the financial management system we have. It works, it's as good as it can be, with the data that goes into it. The system itself, I think, wouldn't you agree, Bill, is a pretty good system, and it can be upgraded. We definitely need to, did we ever get it up to date?
No.
So we're still out of date. The system itself is great, but we need to get it, we need to get the current version. And then there's also some modules we can get that can make it do other things. It's a little, it's really old, but it's very good. And it would be real nice if we could get off the mainframe and into the world, into the cloud, where it would be a lot easier to use, and with a different configuration of not trying to do it in-house, but in the cloud somewhere. And the people that sold us the software have the capacity now to run the system. So we've talked to them before. We've had many conversations with them. We can't seem to move the ball on this one.
Yeah, to just add to what Charlie said, I would say our biggest dilemma here is we don't run on one system for everything here for finances. So we have a mainframe environment. We have a lot of applications on that, including real estate, utility billing. All that stuff all that business is taken care of in the mainframe, and we have to then manually get that information into our financial management system. Financial management system takes care of purchasing, fixed assets, vendor checks, stuff like that. So, we don't have one unified system.
That is a real problem. I mean, the fact that there are lots of places for errors when you start having to move something from one set of books to another set of books, and one system to another system. I mean, you asked me we like the accounting software. We do. We don't like the system. We would really like it if Treasury and Finance and the Controller's Office and the whole city were all running the same system. And we've talked about this for a long time. I think the receiver was trying to get movement in that direction. And I don't know why exactly where we are exactly in this process. I do know that Dan Millard put money in his budget to get his own system for the revenue side, and I would really like to integrate all of this. It doesn't make a bit of sense to me that we can't, we have this gap between revenue and expense. It's scary. It shouldn't be that way.
On sort of a follow-up question, a subjective or a qualitative evaluation of the system, how would you rank the importance of sort of investing in that system, whether it's an investment of time or other resources, to make improvements in the manner that you've just been describing?
Well, I mean, to us, in this office, we like to see things to the penny. It's sort of the way we are. And I don't know that we're going to get there the way things are, because there's a lot of holes in the system. And the fact of the matter is, you can't tell if things are dropping out, Ralph. It's just, if somebody didn't enter something right, somebody did a transposition error. There's a lot of hands-on things that in the 2020, my goodness, you really shouldn't be seeing this kind of stuff. So that we don't like that.
And Doug, I think you had a question, and
Thank
then
you.
we're going to.
Yeah, and I'm staying with the same topic and then maybe expanding it.
Hi, Doug. I didn't recognize you.
Yes, good to
It's
see
been a
you.
long time.
Yeah, a whole different world, right?
Yeah, I'm glad of that.
Yeah. So I do recall seeing a note in the coordinator's report as well, that there have been some at least some nominal internal discussions about moving forward on seeking a common set of software and upgrades for finance and for revenues. And so, I hope that's something that's going to be coming to a little stronger fruition sometime soon. But taking that into a larger context, we do have transition going on now in the finance department. I know, under the charter, you're not the same, but under the charter, you also work together closely, and as a practical matter, you have. So as the city works through the transition, are there any recommendations you would make for management, for software, for operationally in the department, as any kind of transition gives you an opportunity to do?
Well, one of the, I think you're making an important point. It's one of my points. When I came to this job, you can remember, if you were around, the battles between the controller's office and the mayor's office. And I swore that I was not going to get engaged in those things, and I was not going to try to run the city out of the controller's office, and I haven't. I give my advice and give my things that I think we should be doing, but I'm not going to, I don't get any further than that. Now, I will say that the mayor reached out to Bill, was it last week, and asked you about the job description?
Oh, good.
I think that it was Dan Miller reached out to the mayor and offered our assistance if we could be.
Dan did. I thought the mayor asked you.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I was confused about that. Well, Dan Miller offered. And I don't know if the mayor's going to take up on it, but I've offered, and I talked to Mark Woolley, and said, if there's anything that this office can do to help you in this transition, we'll stand ready, willing, and we think we're able to do it. I mean, I think it's important to be on a team down here. We don't have the luxury, as particularly in these times, of spatting. And so I try to avoid it. And so whatever resources we can provide anybody, that's why I like working with you guys. I mean, you asked me, I'm here. I think it's important that people know what's going on with the city's money. So with that regard, we'll do anything anybody asks us to do, but I'm not going to have a press conference and talk about how I don't like the way the finance office is being run. It's not what I do. So
yeah, and
we do think we're a resource.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that, and I don't want my question to be misinterpreted that way either. I was just wondering if you were to set priorities or suggestions, if you had any, as opposed to subjecting your judgment, of course.
Well, I didn't think you were trying to start something.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is
I appreciate your answer, though.
I think this is a good time to ask Charlie and Bill to stick around, because Marita is here with us. And I know there's lots of commonality between what Charlie's been talking about and what Marita's been observing over the years. And so if we could turn it over to Marita once again, it would be great. And we really appreciate, Marita, your partnership in all of this. You two have been a great source of information, and I enjoy our checkups and check-ins every once in a while. And then we'll open it up to questions again after that.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Charlie and Bill, for that great update. That's very helpful. I look forward to the August 15th mid-year report. I think it'll give us all some more insight than what we currently have. I guess the reason why we're all somewhat alarmed is this is such an unusual year with so many unusual circumstances, and with the Capitol being, front and center in the middle of Harrisburg, it's going to impact in many ways. Maybe not immediate, that we can't view it right at the moment, but I think we will see impacts, fiscal impacts this year. And as Neil mentioned, it could go into 2021. So we're all just glad that we're in a good position right now, that the fund balance is solid. I did do the check run review today, so I can give you the exact numbers for today. The general fund balance is at 33 million, which again is still very healthy. And the neighborhood service fund balance, ending fund balance as of today, is 7.3 million. So again, a very safe sound fund balance for a city the size of Harrisburg, and I'm glad to see that. If you saw my report on page 8, I did show that revenues and expenditures were down. Charlie gave some pretty good explanations, he and Bill, as to why they're both down. Even for neighborhood service funds, they're down, but not as significant as they are for the general fund. That's all available for you on page 8 if you have specific questions. But everyone's has their pulse on that August 15th report, because it should reveal some information to us that we want to keep watch on. And then as we move into the next quarter, in particular from September through December, I think we'll have to keep a close watch on expenditures. Good news that healthcare costs are down, but again, you know, one person's illness could change that quickly, and God forbid. And I think it's just the most logical thing for everyone on this this conference call is that we have a steady fund balance. We have some controls on our revenues and expenditures for general fund and neighborhood services fund, and that we keep a close watch on those numbers. We do have a significant debt service payment coming up in, I think it's September. It's pretty significant. It's between 6 and 8 million. I'm not exactly sure the exact amount, but it's delayed. Normally we pay a large payment in March, but this one's been delayed just naturally. It would have been part of the normal process, but there is a pretty significant debt service payment. But we are prepared to pay it. The city is prepared to pay it. They have budgeted the money. So I think that shouldn't have a tremendous impact, but it will have some impact on those fund balance numbers, at least for the general fund, probably going down somewhat. There's also some information in the latter part of the report on parking, if you want more specifics on parking. I do believe one of the groups that does guarantee the debt for the parking is the county of Dauphin. So it'd be important for you to see what I've said regarding the parking, and that comes right from Tremont. I'm literally verbatim quoting Tremont, the administrator of the parking. So everything there is factual, but not from me. It's from them. It's a literal quote, so you can see that. I also did have some discussions with Steve Drizzos, but he and I both work for the same department, so those discussions are somewhat confidential. So can't really share that at the moment, but I'm sure anything critical, we would certainly keep you posted. That's more or less what I had to update you on. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time, but I'm happy to entertain any questions. And I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for permitting me to speak today, and for the committee, the authority for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Any questions for Marita?
I do.
Jeffrey?
Marita, we had talked at our last meeting, which I think you were present at, that there were 3 particular things that we were monitoring and that we were concerned about. 2 of them have already been raised here. One was the parking situation, and we wanted to just understand, because as Neil said, it's an extremely complicated situation the way it was put together. So we just wanted to understand the impact on the city finances should the revenue precipitously drop as it has, and we were concerned. And so I appreciate the fact that we've had that discussion, but it remains a concern for us long-term as to what would happen if there was a problem either with the operation of the parking scheme or the investment in the necessary investment, capital investment, which has to go into the parking facilities, which is one of the things which we've discussed as a variable in the parking scheme. So there's the parking. The second thing Neil already mentioned today, which we were concerned about at the last meeting, which we were concerned about the stadium and City Island and what would happen if there was no baseball season. And Neil had told us that the force majeure clause has already been activated. So I appreciate that information, because we are concerned what happens to the arrangements that would be made for the stadium should there be no revenue for this year, and especially if there's no revenue for next year as well. And then the third thing, which hasn't been mentioned so far in this meeting, is the trash scheme, the other scheme, which had to do with the Lancaster County Solid Waste Authority and the incinerator. And last time we talked about this at our previous meeting, Bruce had said that yes, that the amount of trash collected was significantly down because of the health crisis, but that the tipping fees were down as well. So he believed that it was in a balanced way, not going to be a negative effect, at least from the city's point of view. So we were concerned that this unusual occurrence of what's going on in the city is going to somehow have a negative effect on the promises that were made, minimum amounts of trash that had to be tipped, and somehow that the city would be exposed if that were to happen. So those were three complicated, and I don't know if you have any insight on that third one, but those are three complicated arrangements that we just wanted to make sure we understood what the impact of the health crisis and the changes in what's going on in the city, how those schemes would be impacted. Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to two of them. Not sure I remember the third one. But at any rate, the parking, you're right. You have a good clue there that they're not making a lot of capital investments in those parking garages right now. And there is some concern. Again, Tremont gave a pretty good summary in my report. So where there's significant serious concerns and worries, they're mentioned in that report, that segment of the report. So you're right, there's concerns about the capital investment into those garages. I don't think it's certainly not something that's we're sitting on the edge of our chair, but it's something long-term we need to keep a close watch on, and that there are close observations as to how that continues. And I do think Tremont has done a good job of managing them so far. I mean, they've been way ahead of, even when it was the authority, the parking authority that is, they've been way ahead in keeping things maintained. So we're kind of lucky there. The other question was the trash. It looks like from my report, based on what Lexwama reported to me, that we're not too far off a target for trash, and maybe even meet what was anticipated, interestingly enough. Because people are still living in those houses, they're still disposing of trash, and maybe from a commercial, you're right, from a commercial standpoint, it's certainly down, but I do think that seems to be reason. We're just blessed. That's all I can say, is we're blessed that you can still get the lease payments for parking, still get the trash collected, and what was the third one? I'm sorry.
The stadium, but I think we know that we heard something already about that.
Yeah, the stadium, I'm not as well versed in. I'm sure Neil could speak better. Limited, not that I'm an expert on either of those two areas, but that's what my limited expertise on those two areas. Thank you.
Any other questions for Marita? I know the uncollectible amounts rising was of concern for us, and then I think one worries about the forgiveness program that the city has implemented for its commercial users. To me, would exacerbate that issue. And do we have any other questions? If not,
I have a question regarding the budget. There's a note in the report provided by Charlie, by you and Bill, and it references the amended budget. Have there been budget amendments in 2020 by the city?
Yes.
I couldn't hear it. You kind of broke up at the end.
But Neil just answered. He said that budget amendments have been enacted in 2020.
yeah.
There's routinely 3 or 4 and they're just reallocations so sometimes you get money that wasn't projected in the year before, and that's called an allocation. So they can't spend it without going to council and them allocating it into the budget. And then sometimes, because a budget is a projection, that what you're going to need, sometimes you're moving it from one thing to another because things change as any year goes on. So it doesn't change the revenue base other than the things that are new money, usually grant money that comes in and makes an allocation. But then you do 3 or 4 of those a year to basically make the budget, because you can't move more than, I think, $20,000 over without city council approval. So, for example, there's things that happen because of COVID where we're paying money for things that didn't get anticipated. Money gets moved over to cover those things. Even if it's going to be reimbursed later by the federal government, it's got to be moved into the place in the budget where it's properly utilized by the departments, whether it's fire or public works or the police. And so that happens routinely every year, where there's 3 or 4, sometimes 5, depending on what they are, where money gets reallocated.
An interesting thing is that from our perspective, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
This has been an ongoing issue, and we've talked to Marita about it. We've talked to Bruce about it. They started amending this budget like in January. And if you look at the amount of the money, and that's something else we can talk about another time. We've had in the neighborhood of $70 million budgets for the past 3 or 4 years. We haven't spent anywhere close to that amount of money. They start to talk about, and it hasn't happened as much this year because they budgeted the transfer from the prior year fund balance in the original budget. But typically that's what's been going on. And it seemed to us that they're trying to, they put a budget together that is a little bit fat. And we haven't had, in my years that we've been here, we haven't ever had anybody really get close to the line on their budgets. And so I'm really looking forward. Mark, one of the things Mark did ask me about was working with us to do estimates and estimating techniques. And I'm really looking forward to working with him on that to try and see if we can't get a little do a little bit better job on these budgets. So we're not like going back right away and asking for more transfer from the, budget transfers into the, from prior year to boost up the budget. Because then it begins to not be, it doesn't mean much to us. We can't, if it's not really a real ceiling, and then it's not a real plan. It's just sort of, everything's happening. It's $10 million less than we budgeted. What happened? Why? And so I'm looking forward to spending some time with Mark and figuring out. But so we have been looking at those, and we talked to Marita about it over the years too, about these reallocations. Now, when I was the budget director here, we actually did reallocations. Like as Neil suggested, we take money from somewhere and we shift it between the Parks Department and the Police Department. Most every reallocation we've done here is a misnomer because we don't reallocate. We just move money in from prior year fund balance. So it's a cash transfer. And so the budget changes over the year. It doesn't. What budget that was passed in December is never the same budget we have at the end of the year because we keep pushing more cash into it. So that's just another observation. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get a little bit. Like I said, I had a conversation with Mark about that, and I'm looking forward to talking to him about it. We'd spoken a year or two ago about budget, and then I don't exactly know what happened in the office down there, but I don't think he was doing budget anymore. I think it stayed with Bruce in the finance department, and so we didn't talk about it anymore with Mark, but I am talking to him now. So that the allocations, I would like to see them become a little more reallocations and not transfers.
Charlie, Neil, is it possible to kindly request that as budget transfers and reallocations are made, that we're given notice of that on a regular basis? The only budget document I believe we have is the city's annual budget that was adopted.
Sure, you should get a copy of every one of those resolutions that come through. So that should not be an issue.
Thank you.
We'll send them over. I'll send them to
Another
Jeffrey.
question.
We don't, Ralph, we don't get them and we don't find out about them until they're done. We've never, and I've talked to council before. I said, if you guys want our input into what we think about these reallocations, you should ask us. And I don't really know that they have, but.
Okay. I have a related question. I know you mentioned that August 15 is the mid-year report for the city. I don't know if Neil or Marita, if you've spoken with anybody in the city working on the budget projection side, are there any updates, any status updates regarding the upcoming budgeting activities for the city? Is the next budget document going to be the 2021 budget? Other than the mid-year report, are there any other budgeting or estimating activities for us to have on our calendar to look forward to?
I'm not sure what you're asking, so Marita can answer. I'm not sure what you're asking. So.
Oh, sorry, Neil. I was just going to say, according to Act 47, that the recovery coordinator has to review the proposed budget. I think our review is due in September. I'd have to check the exact date for you, but normally, and that's Act 47 law. That has nothing to do with the particular recovery plan for the city of Harrisburg. Every Act 47 community has to provide a copy of the budget to the recovery coordinator so many days before the end of the fiscal year. And I'm thinking it's either late September or early October that's submitted to us. I don't know if that was your question, but just so that is something that is normally submitted to me at that time.
Thank you. I think I was wondering if the ordinary budget calendar for the year is going to be followed for this year, or if there's going to be something done potentially sooner.
The budgetary calendar is statutory.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's time limits where you hit certain things. One is the part Marita talked about. That was different from non-Act 47 cities where the budget's done about a month earlier because it goes to a coordinator, and I believe it is in October. And then statutorily, it goes to city council in November, who then open it up for public hearings and vote on it in December. That's the statutory budget process. There's nothing that I'm aware of that we have any intent or even ability to change that unless the state legislature, when they come back in September, are dealing with all municipalities, put some extraordinary measure in. And I wouldn't say that's outside the realm of possibility. I don't think that's going to happen. But, they passed, the first time in my memory, essentially a 5-month budget up on the Hill. I don't remember them ever passing a 5-month budget for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So who knows what they're going to do.
So the city would, for example, would never pass a 5-month budget?
We don't have a statutory authority to do that.
Got it. Thank you.
And so maybe, Jeffrey, I think one of the things that might be good is if you could coordinate with Neil and Mark to find out exactly what those dates are that the budget needs to start getting developed, because this also feeds into the development of the updated 5-year financial plan, which is coming due at the end of October. So there's lots of moving parts, and we've got to make sure that we get all the information in a timely fashion so that we can digest it and review it and comment on it.
Yes.
I believe you will get the two of them are going to be hand in glove. I think there's not staff to do them separately. They will be doing the budget as part of the 5-year plan at the same time. The same individuals have to do those projections. So, you will be getting them in real time in that sense.
Great.
Ralph, I think you were also referring to the August 15th mid-year report, which is the other thing we'll be reviewing. And that has dual purposes. One, it gives the city cues on what it needs to do to rebudget to work through the remainder of this fiscal year, but then it also serves as an element for projections to inform the draft budget they put in front in September.
I think it's probably time to move on to other business, and Charlie and Bill and Marita certainly welcome to hang around, and if not, we'd excuse you if you had other things to do.
Thank you for, thanks for the opportunity. I enjoyed it. And anytime you want me to come back, I'll be glad to do it.
We'll get you on the calendar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now turn to other business, and I know Doug was going to make some comments on the Independent Fiscal Office report that just came out.
Sure. Yes, that was just released here about a week and a half ago. It was a request that originated in part from us and in part from the other local government associations to try to give some of their fiscal analysis to what COVID was going to mean for municipal and school finances, both so locals had a tool to use as well as something to show to the legislature, because schools and counties more so than cities, but cities still are dependent on state fiscal circumstances, and the state needs to understand the position they're in when, in this case, they're going to do the remaining 7 months of the fiscal year 2021 budget. The report, I think, was done pretty well. To their usual standard, they avoid projections. They use detail to the best they can. And so on that basis, they did not have data sets that could allow them to drill down to individual municipalities, with the exception of Philadelphia. And they actually left that pretty much off the table for a list of other complicated reasons. And they focused on data sets that they did have. Most of them are divided down to the county level, and that's on the EIT, the property tax, and gaming were the primary ones they reported on. They also made a couple other qualifiers. They noted in particular that the EIT is a lagging quarter, and we did talk about that as a part of Charlie DeBruno's report. And so we won't have a complete sense of COVID's effect for another 2 quarters yet to come. And then they did do 2 interesting comparisons. The one that you would expect them to do is the year over year, so back to 19 and 18. But they also did a comparison for EIT against the Great Recession in 2008 and following, to give a little bit of a different flavor on how peaks and valleys work for municipal finance. So the statewide for the EIT, they showed last year there was about a 3.7 increase in EIT collections going from 2018 to 2019. This year, they're projecting statewide about a 3.4% drop for municipal EIT. And so that's a change of greater than 7%. For Dauphin County, they narrowed in a little more closely, and there they are projecting a drop of about 2.9% for municipal collections overall. They did have a couple other qualifiers because EIT is dependent on work classification categories. And so one thing they noted in particular is that rural counties and their municipalities are probably going to do worse because they're more heavily reliant on on industrial jobs than in our context, where it's more white collar and service industry. And so that's why the number they show for Dauphin tends to run a little bit better than what they project for the statewide average. For the property tax, Pennsylvania, it's the blessing and the curse, I suppose, since we revalue so infrequently. The property tax tends to be, in some sense, recession-proof. On the other hand, it also lags well behind any increases in the marketplace as well. And so they showed about a 1.4% statewide increase in property tax revenues from 18 to 19, but then are projecting a statewide decrease of 1.3, and then a Dauphin County decrease of 1.5 for municipals. The only other qualifier there is they couldn't tell cleanly what the effect had been of the legislation that allowed delay of payment and delay of the whole schedule, the discount, face, and penalty, moving that to the fall. And that, they said, then gave them little ability to really gauge what the effect would be for wage earners who now, because of fiscal capacity, might be pushed off into penalty as opposed to paying in discounts. So on the one hand, your revenues are higher if they're paid in discount. On the other hand, if they're going clear as far as discount, that means you probably have more falling off the far end and not actually paying this year. And I appreciated Charlie's comment about reliance on carryover or doing estimates based on carryover, because the IFO also found that delinquent carryover can amount to sometimes in the range of 4% of your income for a fiscal year. And that, by the way, gets back to that modified accrual. So on a modified accrual basis, we take revenue on a cash basis. So even though a delinquent carryover paid this year is attributable to the prior tax year, it's received this year and accounted for in this tax year. So that's one of the vagaries of modified accrual accounting. Gaming, they said, is really dependent on the reopening and on the capacity limits that are set. And bearing in mind, they were doing this analysis as most of the state was headed toward green, and prior to the governor's more recent announcement that he's reimposing some limits, I think that's going to color what their estimates were. But for Dauphin County specifically, they projected a 2.4% decrease in municipal receipts and an 11.7% decrease in county receipts. And then the county receipt also bleeds back against the municipal because Dauphin County has a tradition of re-granting a large part of their revenues back out to the municipalities. I think that's most of what I gleaned from the report. Overall, compared to what we were seeing in unemployment rates in particular, I think our concerns might have been much greater about the EIT collections. This tends to reduce that concern a little bit, although obviously we don't know what the next couple quarters are going to hold, particularly as businesses try to get back off the ground, and the relative success in doing so in the face of increased numbers in caseloads. I also appreciated Charlie's explanation of the numbers that were in that the budget projection, where it showed where it actually projected higher EIT collections than last year, and the fact that for the final 6 months of the year, they are relying on actuals from 2019 as their projection. And so that gives a better explanation to why that number seems counterintuitive. And that's all I have. I don't know if you have any questions.
Doug, if you could just repeat for the group assembled the source of this report and who they are.
Yeah, this is the Independent Fiscal Office, and this is a group that was set up, I think about 14 years ago now by the legislature. It is Pennsylvania's equivalent of the Congressional Budget Office. So they are an independent agency that scores legislation. Most particularly, they have very specific scoring that they do relative to the Commonwealth budget, both as it's being proposed and then also operationally during the course of the year. And then as a part of their portfolio, they can undertake additional studies at the request of the General Assembly on other state and local fiscal matters. And so by way of example, they've done some other reports on school property tax and a host of other revenue projections on different things as the economy affects state and local fiscal issues.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Doug? There's only one other item that I was going to turn to Jeffrey just for a quick description of our first objective achieved in FY21.
Right. So one of the things that I've been working on with the chair and the vice chair, one of the many things, is a schedule, a calendar for the authority that we could use going forward that would have a month-by-month list of both what we would like to achieve for the authority, as well as what we're anticipating will be submitted to us reports-wise, either from the Act 47 coordinator or from the city or from the independent city auditor or from the controller's office. So we wanted to have a graphic representation of the submissions as well as the things that we had to accomplish throughout the year. We do have a draft, and that with permission of the chair, after this meeting, I'll distribute the draft to all the authority members with the hope that maybe at the August meeting, if we've made any changes and so forth, that might become the official calendar, approved as the official calendar going forward for the authority. Did I get that right, Audrey?
You did, and it's a living document, so we want to make sure that we keep adding to it. I don't know if we had the August 15th date in there. We may have already had it in there, but if not, that should go on there. And so we just want to make sure we know what we should expect, when we should expect, what we must do. And then the other thing we're trying to track is guests that we want to have annually. And then I think as importantly, beginning a list of experts that can help us understand some of these more interesting schemes, let's call them. But so someone that might be able to take some time and truly explain the waterfall payments with the parking and similar projects.
And Marina's being very helpful with that, and we'll try to get some of those people lined up for future meetings.
Great.
I did one other thing that you asked me that I inadvertently stepped over. I know I wanted to mention that I had sent correspondence to the mayor offering at no expense to the city any assistance that he might get from myself or from the authority in the recruitment of a replacement director of finance. Obviously, it's a very major decision for the administration to make, and we want to be supportive of the process and help, just as you heard Charlie say before, help in any way possible. So I did want to reach out to the mayor and just let him know that myself or anybody on the authority, and I'm sure you all would be happy to participate in any way in the recruitment process of Mr. Weber's successor.
Now we come to the time for public comment. Have you received any questions?
I have not. I'm watching the Zoom group chat function, waiting to see if anybody from our audience is interested in asking any questions for today's meeting, and I've peppered them with reminders. And as we sit here right now, I do not have any questions in my group chat function. So.
Well, one says people talk with their feet, and so in this case, maybe people talk with lack of keystrokes. So at this time, if there's nothing else that the board members have to bring up, on the advice of council, I'd like to adjourn the public session of the meeting to an executive session, and we will not return to public session.
Madam Chair, there is a clarification I want to bring up just because we're on the record.
Yes.
And Doug had mentioned this, and I pulled up the coordinator's report. I don't believe they touched the reserve fund with the parking. They touched cash on hand.
Okay.
And the concern was they would go to the reserve fund in July 2021 if a solution wasn't found, and this was a long-term problem. I just want to be clear on the record because it is about how we're financing public debt. So they did have cash on hand to make the payment. If it's from a reserve fund, they've sort of hit it the way they've written it. I'll say that. They refer to it as cash available on hand.
Next time I'll have the report in front of me. I was working off memory. So
you got a better memory than me because I forgot it was there in the first place. Besides that, I have 3 points I want to make. One, I have been involved in the debt solutions and the fights for the city of Harrisburg as a private citizen, as counsel for the city council, and as counsel for the city for now 10 full years of my adult life. I am very familiar with its moving parts, and I am very familiar with most of the documents that govern what we do. From my perspective, the city's provided the board with a draft agreement in January. We've provided written explanations to the board of the reasonings in great detail, and from my perspective, have not gotten those back. I'm authorized to negotiate at the table in public with this board, empowered by the mayor to do so, to get to an intergovernmental agreement. I frankly don't know what the objections are. I just don't know what they are. And we do contracts all day, every day in the office that I'm in with other government entities and other private sectors. So I just want to let you know that's available to this board to sit down and do it and get it done. And that's the authority that I come to this table with. Also, I will let you know that the report that the board filed, I reviewed. I disagree with the assessments of it. I've actually had to contract with Finance Council to decide if we have to make additional reports. We do not, because it's not our report. I believe, as often is the case between organizations, it is probably a gap in each other's jargon and each other's objectives and each other's understanding of what is in front of them. And therefore a miscommunication of information or misunderstanding back and forth of information. That information should be corrected between the city and this board moving forward. I'm willing to be the translator of that as best I can as this board has questions. And I'm willing to make sure information that is available comes. The last is, I cannot tell you for certain that the August 15th deadline will be met for the mid-year. I know they're working on it right now. I think they're still assessing what the loss of Mr. Weber at this moment in time does to actually completing that on time, because he supervised it in great detail. The objective is to hit it, but I just want to let this board know that's one of the things that's going on right now. You know, staff is still pulling it together. They're providing information to Mr. Woolley, but I'm just giving you a heads up. That's possible that it won't strictly meet that deadline because of the loss of key personnel. But the attempt is going to be to make sure it gets there. But I'm just giving you a fair warning. So.
Thank you. Let me respond very briefly to what you said. Regarding the agreement, we have always been willing to sit down with the mayor and the appropriate people to work out the agreement. The mayor told us that he has no time for the agreement, and I believe that was done in March. So if we can get all the parties together, I know that we would be willing to sit down, and that should include, in my opinion, City Council. Relative to the Section 203 report, from my opinion, speaking for myself, I stand by every word of it. It is what we've seen, what we've researched, and what we've concluded. And then thank you for the heads up that the August 15th deadline might not be met. We will stand by to receive further correspondence. And I go back to asking for a motion to adjourn to executive session, from which we will not return to public session, on the advice of counsel to talk about litigation.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Kathy. A second?
Second.
Ralph, thank you.
And am I correct that Mr. Grover is permitted to attend?
Yes,
Okay.
as well as Mr. Raymond.
Okay, so are we adjourned?
All those in favor, sorry. Aye. All those opposed. We now are adjourned, and you will stop the recording at this time. Thank you, everyone, for having participated, and